for all being here. Lots of information always packed into these 2 days, so it's a testament to your interest that you can sit here and continue to consume more information halfway through a second day. I use my second talk at MIFS always to run quickly through the stocks that are here, that are in the Maven portfolio that I own. And the reason that I do that is because there is so much information that's thrown at you guys over 2 days. I think it's hard to remember, you know, for enough information to stand out, for particular pieces of information to stand out. So I go through each stock that I own, and my idea is to spend 30 seconds to a minute on each stock just to explain the basics of my investment thesis. Why do I like that stock? Sort of elevator pitch style. And hopefully that's a concise little nugget that can stick with you, and maybe you can maybe stand out a little bit amidst all of the information that you've been hit with. Just before I get into that list, this is part of what I finished my talk with yesterday. And you know, the premise is that I'm pretty bullish on gold right now. I think that no matter what happens, either we'll get a trade deal, in which case the markets are going to continue for a while, but gold is going to get bid as a safe haven, or we're not going to get a trade deal and things are going to turn bad sooner, and then gold will really get bid. So I'm quite bullish on gold right now. Within that, though, I think it's important. It's really easy to get entranced by exploration stories. We all do. I love exploration stories. They're my favorite, but I make sure that my portfolio is not just full of exploration stories, because they're the hardest to pick and win. When you're expecting a gold market to perform, it's really important to also, alongside those exploration bets, to have some more reliable picks in there. And so that's why you want to spread your bets through the different kinds of stocks that are out there, the different kinds of risk profiles that are out there. So mid to large producers, new and single asset producers, projects that are growing, that are strong but still have splashy results, explorers, royalty companies. Make sure you cover your bases. It gives you more ways to win. Within all of that, no matter what kind of company you're looking at, there's some things that you want to make sure are always present. Good share structure. Now, when you start talking about large producers, obviously, the share structure concept is different. But when you're talking about small companies, share structure is incredibly important. You want long-term stable shareholders and a good shareholder registry. You want to make sure that the company has access to capital. This is so important, right? If a company doesn't have access to capital, they can't do anything, and so the story will stagnate. And I think at the end of the day, it's really, you just want to ask yourself, does management have a clear and detailed plan to create value? And that sounds straightforward, that sounds simple, obviously they should, but they really should. And it's amazing, a lot of, especially on the exploration front, geologists get entranced with rocks, as they should, that's their job, but you need to have a management group there that keeps their eye on the prize, and the prize is creating shareholder value. Hopefully that's through a large discovery, but you need to create shareholder value. So what is the plan to do that? What's the plan to do that tomorrow, next month, next year, and 5 years down the road? There needs to be a clear and detailed plan. And if plan A doesn't work, what's the fallback plan, right? So there needs to be real focus on how they're actually going to create value, not only an excitement over a geologic concept with some rocks. Okay, so now I'm going to run through the portfolio picks that I have that are here. I'm sort of going in that order from producers on down the types of companies. So we'll start with Atlantic Gold, who certainly fits into the strong single asset producer category. I mean, the line on top there is really the standout quality for Atlantic Gold. They are the lowest cost gold producer in the sector. And that really matters, especially in the gold market today, where low cost, it's not just produce more, it's make more money. That's the mantra in the gold sector, and so low cost production is incredibly important. You also want growing output, they have that. And risk is very managed with Atlantic Gold. They have low jurisdictional risk, and management has a clear focus on managing mining risk. I could talk about that for a long time, but the risk mitigation efforts at Atlantic are very standout. With Atlantic, low cost, standout single asset producer. Then I had that category that I called strong and splashy. I need a better name for that. That's just what I came up with yesterday. But What I mean by that is companies that have an established resource, so that's the strength. There's a fundamental thing there that's backstopping the valuation, but then there's also splashiness. There's also news that's going to come out that's going to grab market attention. I think Integra is a good example of that. They have this very large resource that already exists at the Delamar and Florida Mountain projects. That resource is growing. They're doing a good job of growing that. They're about to show how economic that likely is in a mine plan. So that's the fundamental strength. But then on the splashiness side, they're really having some good exploration success. So in growing that resource and potentially in finding high grade. I say potentially, they are finding high grade within the lower grade stuff already. And then there's lots of really interesting geology that's being worked in and around the area. So I think Integra is the kind of company that has that fundamental strength, has an asset that's advancing towards production, so it's at a stage and a scale that is standout in the sector, that's short on such assets, but also has this pipeline of exciting news that's coming up. And they're also very well funded and a good share structure for the size of company that it is. Velocity Minerals I also put in this strong and splashy category, so Velocity we'll hear from shortly. This is a cluster of projects that's near a central processing facility that's owned by their Bulgarian partner, so this is in Bulgaria. And this is the group that just got a $9 million investment yesterday, day before yesterday, from Atlantic Gold. And that's an important one to think about. Atlantic is a central processing facility that is being fed by several deposits. That's exactly the same concept that Velocity is advancing in Bulgaria, and the really demanding technical team at Atlantic sees the same potential in Velocity. So they kind of see Velocity as Atlantic 4 years ago. If you wanted to look at Atlantic share price 4 years ago versus now, you know, no guarantees by any stretch, but that's the concept here. And the qualities that they're looking for: low cost, low capex, low strip ratio, simple metallurgy, simple processing, and lots of targets that you could use to expand the production scenario here. So that's Velocity. Keith shortly will tell you more about that. Then we get into what I'll call the top tier explorers category. Again, explorers are hard to pick, the hardest to pick, right? One of the ways to mitigate that risk is to work with explorers that have multiple projects on the go. The more kicks you have at the can, the more likely you're going to win. And so Oren, one of their strengths is that they have multiple projects. I sometimes call Oren sort of a portfolio of explorers in one. So that's one advantage of Oren, for sure. Right now, what I'm most excited about with Oren is their Sombrero project, which is down in Peru. I am sure Ivan will spend 9 of his 10 minutes talking about the Sombrero project because it's pretty exciting. But this is a really cool area where there's a very famous copper porphyry belt called the Las Bambas district that is totally staked up, has big mines on it, very famous. Just west of that, volcanic cover has obscured the prospective rocks, and so that area has seen very limited exploration. Oren identified erosional windows through that cover, and they're starting, and from what it looks like at this point, from mapping, sampling, stratigraphy, geophysics, it looks really exciting. So Oren also has the Big Committee Bay project up in Nunavut. They're getting there on that. It takes a long time. It takes time and technical expertise to figure out a 300-kilometer long greenstone belt. So they're still working on that, but it looks good as well. So a couple of strong projects, but Sombrero is what's got me excited about Oren right now. And Oren is certainly a team where access to capital is not a problem. Also in the top tier explorer, Aben. Now Aben, again, another company where it's multiple projects that really lend strength to this group. Forest Kerr up in the Golden Triangle, that's the one that grabbed the market's attention early this season. They made a discovery there. They reported some very exciting drill results. Subsequent work through this season, there's still more to figure out up there. The market perhaps was a bit disappointed that they didn't figure it out right away. That's exploration for you. But what's one of Aben's big strengths is that they're not now going to go quiet for the entire winter because Forest Kerr is not their only project. They also have the Chico project, which is in Saskatchewan, very close to SSRM's Santoy CB mine, where some new looks at geology. have opened up prospectivity there. There's SSRM is doing a bunch of exploration there, and Aben is going to be working there, and they have the Justin project in the Yukon. All of these individually really good projects, so to put them all together in Aben, which has lots of money to advance them, makes for an interesting story for sure. The other top-tier explorer that from the Maven portfolio that is here today is Great Bear. Great Bear, the standout gold discovery of this cycle so far. This is in Red Lake. This is a situation where the Dixie main zone is already, I mean, Chris wouldn't say it, but I'd say the Dixie main zone already has 1 million ounces in it of high-grade gold, a bunch of it open pittable because this starts at surface. But this developing geologic model that they have there is proving to be very accurate. That phenomenal high-grade result that they reported earlier this week, which was 1.6 kilograms of gold over 0.7 meters, they made that hit because their model brought them to that exact spot. And that model now predicts sort of 10 kilometers of prospective targets. So a really exciting story for what they've already found and how those zones can grow, but I'd say even more exciting for what they haven't even tested yet. So Great Bear is a standout explorer for sure. Moving into other categories, the royalty player who is here, that's in the Maven portfolio, is Ely Gold Royalty. This is a large portfolio of Nevada projects and royalties that was established because this team has unique knowledge of the state. And so this is a group who's been working there for such a long time. They know so many people that they're able to get access to, they're able to sort of figure out who owns what and buy things that just other people can't get. That sounds, I don't know, that may sound sort of unbelievable, but it really is true. There's a lot of families that own projects there, aren't for sale if just any old person walks up and tries to buy them. There's royalties that have been forgotten because they've been passed from this person to that person and who knows where they ended up. Jerry can figure all that out. And that's been Ely's strength in establishing this portfolio. And that strength has been proven by the number of really good companies that have now done deals with Ely because they realize, oh my gosh, you figured that out? You put that land package together? I want that. So organic royalty generation, some of which are going to start paying in the fairly near term, in sort of an 18-month time frame. Strong partners. Each individual deal doesn't seem that significant. You'll see, go through their list of news releases, each individual deal doesn't seem that big, but they add up. And so this is a group that's really growing a solid base of projects and royalties in the world's most popular mining district of Nevada. And they have a good amount of money came in. They brought $2 million in revenue last year, so fairly self-funding. The last two companies on my list are uranium companies. So before I get to the companies, I thought I might speak to uranium for a moment because I didn't do that yesterday, and otherwise it would be a little bit out of the blue to just throw uranium companies out there. I know there's been some discussion of uranium. I'm sure Amir yesterday talked about uranium when he was talking about UEC. The short version of the story is the spot price is up 35% or so in the last 8 months. That's because the major producers of the world cut production. They decided collectively to turn the market around. The market had been very oversupplied, and they're like, we don't need to oversupply the market, let's cut production. They've turned that market around. It has also helped that producers and various funds who want to own physical uranium because they believe the market is going to strengthen have also been buying up uranium out of the spot market. So collectively, between there being less production and various groups buying out the spot market, they're really cleaning up the excess uranium that was sloshing around and had created such a bear market for so long. Against that, we're in a situation where utilities in America really need to start signing new long-term contracts. Usually utilities make sure they have their uranium requirements covered for almost 8 years because utilities don't want to not have nuclear fuel. Right now they're in a position where a lot of utilities only a few years out are in need of fuel. They they've been lackadaisical about signing those contracts because there was so much excess uranium around, so they were able to just buy it up whenever they needed it. But now that situation is changing. So a new wave of contracting, I believe, is coming, and that when those contracts come, producers are not going to sign contracts at spot price because they're not going to agree to sell product at a loss. Why would they do that? So those contracts will be at a higher price, and that will pour fuel on a fire that is already starting to smolder, like I say, up 35%. Then there's this Section 232, which is a fairly long conversation in itself, but the short version of that is that in a few months, the US government will release its conclusion of its investigation about whether a reliance on uranium imports is a threat to US national security. And because the United States relies on imports for 98% of its uranium, and uranium creates 20% of US electricity, it's pretty likely that they are going to say that reliance on imports is a threat to national security. Then there's going to be a 3-month period where President Trump will have to decide what actions he's going to recommend to try and remedy that situation. Lots of potential there for what those might be, but at the end of the day, US producers, US uranium producers will get a large boost if the decision is that reliance on imports is a threat to national security. So this is a short-term game that I think is a pretty good one to play, and it involves buying US producers. So that's the brief backdrop on uranium, and so then quickly I'll just go through the 2 uranium companies that I own who are present at the show. One of them is ISO Energy, who will present shortly here. ISO Energy, I think the short version of this story is that the uranium has been in a bear market for so long that there are very few funded, active explorers out there. Hardly anyone has any money. Uranium explorers almost all died. So there's hardly anyone actively out there drilling. ISO just completed a $4.5 million bought deal financing before Christmas. So that is pretty interesting in itself that there was a bought deal financing for that amount of money in the uranium space. But it means that ISO has money, and they're going to be out there drilling, and they're following up on what might have been a discovery last year that nobody paid much attention to at a target called Hurricane. If this pans out, then ISO will be one of the very few companies out there reporting high-grade uranium, reporting a uranium discovery into a market that's excited about uranium, right? So that's the setup. They have the potential to sort of be that individual company out there that has exciting uranium news in a market that's keen on uranium. I'm sure Craig will have much more detail to tell you about that. And finally, Uranium Energy. This is clearly a bet on the Section 232, or at least buying Uranium Energy right now would be a bet on Section 232, which is that whole investigation into the reliance on imports. UEC is ready to put as much as 4 million pounds of annual production of uranium online. It would take them not very long to do it because they've spent the bear market permitting everything and getting ready to go, consolidating projects, delineating more resources, and permitting, which is obviously the big holdup. They also have their own processing facility in South Texas, which is an important asset. So if you believe that the odds of this short-term U.S. or not short-term, this U.S. uranium excitement, if you think that's a good chance, then buying a U.S. uranium producer is a good idea right now, and UEC is my bet for that, largely because they're completely unhedged. None of their book is already sold. So that, my friends, is the brief rundown of the companies here that I own. And with that, I will move on to the presenters for this segment. And